Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is a return of the Gimme 10 series, series in which I focus on a genre or subgenre of music and, talk about it through 10 interesting records. By no means is it a top 10. It's not meant to be a top 10. It's just 10 interesting records that would introduce a person to this genre if they knew nothing about it. For example, it's just kind of a beginner's entry point into a certain genre. Today, we're going to talk about tribal ambient or fourth world, as it's also known. And it's a style of music that I often refer to in videos because I love those records. It's a sound that I'm particularly drawn to. And I thought, why not have a little compendium of some of my favorite albums of that style of music and, some essentials as well as some, lesser known records, obviously, as usual. It's going to be a Give It 10, and I'm going to, at the end, add 5 Australian fourth world records just because, why not? So what is fourth world or tribal ambient anyway? Obviously, it's ambient music, has very sort of drony, atmospheric, ominous quality. You could say mysterious as well, which is created by layers of percussion mostly. And that percussion is largely ethno world type percussion. I mean, don't let me say this in any offensive manner, but we're talking about sounds from far and wide, from the Middle East, from Southeast Asia, from Africa. You've got the rise to prominence to instruments like the congas, the djembe, the bongos, kalimbas and cymbals and bells and whistles and all sorts of sounds that are incorporated into a sort of atmospheric layer, and often on top you do have a main instrument beats. I don't know, with John Hassel, the trumpet, for example. Michael Brook uses the guitar, but you've got a sound which is treated in a way which is very distinctive. And instead of trying to talk about it, maybe I'll give you a little sample of what I mean here. So you can tell, I mean, instead of trying to imagine what I've got in my head, I would say tribal ambient or fourth world is connected to other subgenre like such as new age, or even a little bit of industrial music goes in there, and what they call what is known as dark ambient or ritual ambient, which are forms of industrial music mixed with ambient, mixed with fourth world. Because as when music is diluted, it can take other forms and marry well with other subgenres. But instead of blah blahing to infinity, why don't I show you some key records? So I'd like to start with this because it kind of epitomizes the genre. John Hassel with fourth world music, possible music's fourth world volume 1. Collaboration between John Hassel and Brian Eno. Now, Eno is kind of a magpie, as we know, and I still respect him deeply as a musician, but this is the work largely of John Hassel. Accompanied by people like Nana Vasconcelos. Again, this is what I was saying about the otherworldly quality of the music. You've got sounds that come from either South America in this case, or Asia, or wherever that the fancy of the composer takes us. You've got some beautiful percussions by Aibe Dieng. You've got obviously Brian Eno, which does treatments on these. This is an essential album. I mean, really, of any genre, of any style, it's so meditative, soothing, it's transportative, it's like when you hear the trumpets of John Hassell treated the way it is and just soaring into, the great beyond, you would say, because and you've got these. I mean, when you listen to tribal ambient, you really are transported either into the desert somewhere or into the jungle, somewhere that's really lush and sort of. That's I think that the aim of listening to music is transport you somewhere else. So 1980, and I couldn't talk about this one without talking about this one, which is the volume 2, which is called Dream Theory in Malaya. Again, John Hassell. Again, Brian Eno, but coordinated by Michael Brook, who plays I think guitar and bass on this. And here you've got a more gamelan style approach, more sort of like Southeast Asian kind of approach. But the soundscape is, they're very similar records, I would say. Both of these are just, 1980, 1981, both of these are editions. E.g., amazing records, flat amazing. And in the same spirit, same line, and same kind of players, I would like to showcase Hybrid by the great Canadian guitar player Michael Brook. This is a masterpiece as well, with Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois. A record that I picked up years and years and years ago, and I keep revisiting and going, gosh, why don't more people know this record? Because it's just sublime. So you've got the same atmospheric soundscape as you would find on the John Hassell record. The main difference being that the treated guitar of Michael Brook is the lead instrument on this, and because he's such a fine craftsman when it comes to playing the guitar, you get these aerial kind of, it completely takes you to another world. This is from 1985. Beautiful record. A record which for me is a key record in that style of music, and it probably is not exactly a tribal ambient record or a fourth world record, but for me it just bears all the hallmarks, is this fabulous soundtrack by Peter Gabriel, Passion, the music for The Last Temptation of Christ by Martin Scorsese. A masterpiece on all levels, but I think as a soundtrack, you don't need the film with this. This plays, it is like a who's who to start with of players. You've got Shankar, not Ravi Shankar, but Shankar, the violin player, the violinist, Indian violinist. You've got, who plays on this? You've got, obviously, Peter Gabriel, Billy Cobham on this. You've got David Sancious. You've got Yusuan Dor. You've got Baba Mal, who play various cymbals and drums and percussions, and you've got synth as well. You've got ney, flute. You've got oboe. You've got double violin. I mean, this is... And in fact, what's interesting is it lists all these places, and rightfully, that's the sound palette, the soundscape you get on this record. This record is a masterpiece, really. And whilst I'm here, I'd like to mention the companion piece, which is Passion, the Sources. And so what this is what Peter Gabriel used to inspire himself to make this record. And you've got people like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, which I mean, the god of Pakistani music, Baba Amal, Shankar, both of whom play on this. You've got some Ethiopian musicians. You've got Nasser Giwan from Morocco. You've got the musicians of the Nile. You've got so many amazing And so you can see how this sort of feeds into that, and how this idea of fourth world emerges in the music, where you know, layers of, like, you know, as I said, otherworldly music, which is ambient in nature. I want to talk about Steve Roach a little bit. Steve Roach, former motorcycle racer who turned his hand at ambient music, and a lot of his records are really amazing. But this here is a fantastic take on, tribal ambient, where he mixes, obviously, native, indigenous Australian soundscapes with ambient music, and notably the didgeridoo, which has the same function here as, say, the trumpet has on John Hassell records. This is a sublime record, and very transportive as well, and you know, for me, living here, you know, it's great to hear records like these, because you know, it's just so respectful, like, it's done so respectfully, I feel. The next artist I would like to mention, the next record I would like to mention in this video, is the great Uki Conjugate, a band from Nottingham in England, and the record is called Into Dark Water. Again, like a key sort of experimental dark ambient with hints of industrial album, but at the core, at heart, a very much a tribal ambient record, with a group of very distinct instrument: tongue drums, bongos, wooden percussion, mbira, cymbal, baking tray, accompanied obviously with synth and drum machines and the like, and so you've got this mixture between, you know, this kind of post-punk sensibility and this ethno worlds fusion kind of, you know, soundscape. Beautiful records. Uki Conjugate, very highly recommended. Gotta mention Muslim Goes. Mullah said, one of his best records. Some people say even his best record. So Muslim Goes was Bryn Jones, who died in 1999 and was a fierce Palestine supporter, and you know, almost all of his records are just tributes to the land of Palestine. I mean, you know, he would have a field day if he lived until this time period. But this record has a very distinct, again, tribal ambience, dark ambience, very somber and very, oh my God, how would I describe this? Kind of, again, I used the word ominous earlier in the video, but that is what comes to my mind when I think of this ominous, mysterious, brooding, dark quality, you know, kind of twisted in a way, you know, when you listen to this. It's originally released in 1998 and recorded at the Abraham Mosque in Manchester, and very much what it looks like on the cover. Very much, 100%. You can listen to this, buy with confidence. Another little known gem of the genre is this great record from Richard Horowitz called Eros in Arabia, which came out originally in 1981. It's a very minimalistic take on tribal ambient. Richard Horowitz actually died only in April this year. He was 75 years old. He was originally born in Buffalo in the United States, and subsequently lived in various places, but you know, died in Marrakesh. And you can see that his obsession for those sounds, you know, were alive and well until he died. I recommend the second side, Elephant Dance track, and I quite like the description. Only two instruments are used, the ney and the Prophet 5 synth, no sequencer. The style of ney playing on this is imaginary based on what the instruments might have sounded like had it been played at the time of the first Muslim influence in Java. Yeah. Edited by Frank Eaton with assistance from Roger Iliad and John Hassel. So sorry, but it's this record has a minimalistic, very much, but also, I don't know, sometimes I hear a lot of like these kind of early 80s post-punk sounds in there. I don't know why. I'm not sure why I'm hearing this, but in any case, just take a listen for yourself. Bebo Beldon, Italian musician who made this wonderful, wonderful collection of tunes, Vapor Frames 8691, featuring Steve James on sarod and violin. So Bebo Beldon plays acoustic and electronic drums and percussion, synths, bass, treated guitar samplers, computer tapes, and it does what it says on the tin. When you look at the cover, I mean, you just totally imagine this to be, you see this. It's a barge, or it's a canoe lost at sea, and it's the universe that he wants to take you into. Very similar to a John Hassel record. If you're into John Hassel, this will be it's not 1,000 miles away. Came out obviously around 1991 or thereabouts. Couple of Spanish records, why not? So I've talked about this record many times. Infin Africa, the group comprised of Luis Delgado and who's the other guy? And Juan Alberto Arteche, who is the main man on Infin Africa. Very much a more upbeat version of Tribal Ambient. If you listen to the first track, Radio Tarifa, it's very much got this kind of upbeat, almost, dancey kind of form of it, but the whole record is a scorcher. They released an album called Infin Africa with the same sleeve as this, but like black and white, so brown. And this, has most of that plus some extra tracks. Very highly recommended. Another little known Spanish sort of dark ambient, more leaning towards the industrial dark ambient, admittedly, than the tribal ambient record. The debut album by Juan Belda, which is here presented as a reissue. He owns the label, which is called Abstract Records. That's his label. And so he's reissued his own record basically. Came out in 1986, recorded in Madrid. This has more of a... So he was part of like some quite important Spanish bands, new wave bands, but this is a good starting point for Juan Belda. It's got a sort of like Dead Can Dance meets John Hassel meets a bit of Nurse with Wound kind of. It's in between. It's sort of evolved in between those sonic soundscapes. Beautiful record. What else I could say? Just go and I guess me showing it to you. Go and listen to it. And the last record I want to show here, it's more recent record, which I really like. It's the great DK Gate of Enlightenment. DK is a French ambient artist. I don't know much about DK. he's released lots of records. I've got a couple of his records actually. This is from 2021, and it lives. It's imbued with the same spirit as like early John Hassel records. It's got this kind of very tripped out, otherworldly, Hassel-esque spirit, but with a more electronic kind of. So I think all of this is made on the laptop basically, rather than being made with traditional ethnic instruments. And I thought, well, I'll show you some Aussie records, Australian albums, 5 of them, which fall into this kind of thing because I live here in Australia, and why not? Let's start with the oldest one. This is a wonderful record. This is Gone Wonderland, which is a 2-man project. Charlie McMahon and Peter Carolan, and they recorded this in 1984. Was issued originally on Powderworks. This is the original press, obviously. And the album is called Terra Incognita. I think it's probably a play on word on Terra Nullis, which Australia was called by the settlers Terra Nullis, so the land of nothing, basically. Except for the native, the indigenous Australians that live there already. But this is with Terra Incognita. So yeah. So what you've got there is a mixture of synth and didgeridoo, and it's quite powerful. It's really well put together, and it's driving and kind of hypnotic, and I don't know how to really represent this, but I would recommend that you listen to Drought and Anthem, the first 2 tracks of side 2. You'll get a good idea. Terra Incognita. An absolute favorite of mine. This record will be hard to find though if you want a copy of it, because it's pretty much out of print now, but I mean, you might be able to score one on Discogs, I don't know. This is the great Phil Stroud, who is I think he's a, what does he play there? Percussion, but he normally is a bass player, yeah. Normally a bass player, and he appears on various projects on the Melbourne jazz scene. He's even contributed a track on the Melbourne jazz compilation that was put out by Giles Peterson a few years ago. He's not a big name, but if you live here and you're interested in jazz, he appears on enough things that you've heard his name. So he put out this record in 2022, and as soon as I saw it appear in the shops and I saw the sleeve, I immediately thought, wow, this got to be at least good. What it is, it's very reminiscent. I was talking about Peter Gabriel before and Passion. I take this as a point of reference, very, very similar in some ways. Again, very much a tribal ambient record. Lots of, a great sort of, panoply of instruments, from guitar to mandolin to pianos to lots of ethnic things like a shakuhachi or a zurna, guitar synth, lots of really great instruments. Double album. Take a listen to Chase the Dragon or the first track, and you'll get the sense of this, the sort of sense of John Hassel meets Peter Gabriel sound that I'm talking about. And a guy who plays on that record is the great Adam Halliwell, who's the guitar player in Wildlife. And this record is I totally adore. It's from 2023, record that I immediately jumped on when it came out, because it corresponds to a sound that it's very much again in the John Hassel vein. Just a beautiful record. And I recently sent a copy of this to Stunty, and I think he very much enjoyed it too. Beautiful, beautiful album. Another recent album, which nobody here will know because it's such a small imprint. This is the band's called Angophora, and it's the band led by a guy called Santilli. I've talked about Santilli. He's an ambient artist from Sydney, and as the sleeve shows, it really does what it says on the tin. It's no more, no less than a fourth world tribal ambient. Just the sleeve pays every possible homage to what they're trying to convey, the man lost in the desert. And they play congas, bongos, tabla, kalimba, shakers, percussion, drums, bow, synth. They're a duo. 2021, Angophora, killer. And the last one, which I just replayed just then, amazing little record. Looks like this is totally paying homage to music for films, isn't it? By Sam Mallet. Sam Mallet is an Australian musician, but comes originally from Mauritius and settled very young in Australia, and made in the 1980s, 1990s some cassettes with very nature recordings meet ambient kind of music, and again very, very much in that kind of Eno meets Hassel way. Very little known, but just beautiful music, very stuff that I really treasure. Wetlands. That's it for this Gimme 10. I hope I wasn't too long or too babble centric, but if I said things wrong, or if I misrepresented something, please let me know. But otherwise, leave me some comments as usual, and we can talk together. Take care, everyone.